In this next section, we're going to be looking at immigration and citizenship, and we'll be considering how different groups have had an easier time both immigrating and being granted citizenship in the United States. The issue of immigration and citizenship in our country is an essential aspect of race and ethnic studies. Those that are granted citizenship have more power and more resources available to them. Various political rights, such as voting, legal entitlements, such as welfare or Social Security, are bestowed only upon citizens. Those who are not citizens have no claim to these privileges. This then begs the question, who deserves to be granted the status of citizenship? As we are looking at differences between groups in this country, and those often are groups that have been marginalized by our own country, this becomes a central issue of important consideration for this course. As you can see from the illustration, different groups gain their voting rights at different points in U.S. history. So where exactly does this status of citizenship come from? Our Constitution refers to we the people. Our Constitution does not define who people are. However, it does define who people are not. The Constitution established two groups of individuals that are implied not as people it protects. These two groups are Native Americans, and it sets aside a category of those persons held in bondage, implying that slaves are not considered people under the protection of the Constitution. African Americans were not legally given the right to vote until 1870. And even then, Jim Crow laws stopped many from voting. And women were not federally guaranteed the right to vote until 1920. It was the 14th Amendment to the Constitution that was ratified in 1868 that defined citizens to mean all persons born or naturalized in the United States. This makes it easy to understand that if someone is born in the U.S., then they're a citizen. How the policy of naturalization is interpreted becomes a gatekeeping function to naturalization. Early immigration legislation required that persons who were naturalized be free white persons. Currently, the naturalization process is a multi-step process that includes filling out forms, getting identification cards, biometrics, meaning fingerprinting and photographs, an interview, an English and civics test, and taking an oath of allegiance. The fees that are associated with applying currently cost about $750. Additionally, one has to meet a residency requirement, which is usually about 5 years. During that period of time, the person has to maintain a green card. Certain people are exempted from the general requirements. The issue of citizenship and naturalization are hot topics for the people in our country at this time. To be an immigrant means that someone has come to the U.S. from a foreign country to live permanently in the U.S. Some immigrants are voluntary and come hoping for new opportunities in the U.S. Others are forced to leave due to political oppression, environmental issues, or face other life-threatening circumstances. From 1820 to the 1920s, over 33 million Europeans left their homeland and immigrated overseas, and 3/5 of these people came to the U.S. Generally, the reason that people immigrated from Europe was due to economic circumstances, but some came because of political or religious oppression. Understand that those that came and colonized the Americas were considered settlers, because America could not grant citizenship as it was merely a British colony at that time. Not all the people that left Europe at that time came to the U.S. Some left their homelands to establish colonies in Asia, Africa, and North and South America, where colonies had been established as early as the 1500s. Historically, immigration was affected by 3 factors. First was the population growth in Europe. Life expectancy was on the rise in Europe, and the longer people lived, the more the population grew, and the fewer the resources became and the less job opportunities that could be secured. The second factor was industrialization. As fewer people were needed on the farms, the more people would migrate to the cities. But there were not as many jobs available in the cities as there were people migrating to them. Technological innovation also increased immigration. As steamships and railroads became more common, long-distance travel became easier. Immigrating to the U.S. was not as daunting on a steamship as it was on a sailing ship. Immigration can be seen as being based on a push-pull type of a system. Push refers to economic incentives to leave one country, and pull is the incentive to come to the new country. Rates and need for labor is a strong economic factor, but push can also be due to political realities such as oppressive governments. A push factor could also be a food shortage. Oftentimes, there are at least one, if not multiple, factors regarding both push and pull to or from a country. Pull factors can also include various different resources, not just economic ones such as labor. The lure of land and freedom from religious and political oppression were strong pull factors for immigrants drawn to the Americas. Sometimes social networks, friends and family having established roots in the new country are strong pull factors as well. If one family member establishes themselves in a new country, they often host other family members and friends, helping them establish a new foothold in the host country. Immigrants to the U.S. faced tremendous challenges. To secure just the basics such as food and housing, work had to be secured. There were also social and cultural barriers. Many had to learn a new language. Customs and values were different. While the U.S. thinks of itself as a melting pot, traditionally people from other places have not been easily accepted. It can be particularly hard for people that are not from European countries, as the U.S. is based on European culture in many ways.